Tell us about your team at LMR Elder Care. And specifically, I'm wondering, how does your company improve the quality of life for the person who needs care and his or her caregivers?
Yeah, so thanks for this question. So LMR Elder Care, we are a boutique care management company. We don't have a huge team of people, which, that might be the right fit for some families, that they want to know that there's always, that there's going to be a care manager available, or 24-hour, emergency service. That's not how I work. I personally don't, I always say to my clients, I shouldn't be called in an emergency. You should be calling 911. So, I can understand the need for kind of that emotional insurance, but I've never let anyone down.
Right.
In my 21, almost 22 years. But I do understand the need for feeling that you need that there. And so I will say to someone, if that's important to you, that's not the right fit for me. And that's okay. There's lots of options out there. There's different funeral homes that might fit other people, and we all play nice in the sandbox. So, I have no problem referring a colleague if I think it's going to be a better fit for them. The way I work is I keep my caseload manageable. There are times I've had to say that I couldn't take on a new client. It's very personalized. When a person becomes my client, I share my personal cell. I was already texting with people by 8 a.m. this morning. I'm going to go to a care plan meeting at a rehab later with a daughter who's like, they scheduled this. Can you make it? I don't distinguish my company. We don't distinguish between weekends and nights when it comes to the hourly rate. It's all the same to me because I'm not in a 9-to-5 job, and I recognize that. So if I'm going to do what I'm doing, I have to meet my families where they are. And sometimes it's after work, and sometimes things come up on, I know we spoke about Magic Fountain, but there's a really good ice cream place up on Route 10 in Wedgwood as well. I've checked them all out. And, I remember I was there, I think it was in the fall, and I get a call from a home care agency. A client had been discharged from the hospital 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, and they couldn't find the medications. And they're now home. And I'm like, okay, so now we're going back and forth trying to figure out, and I'm ordering my mid-ship with hot fudge. So, it's not a 9-to-5 job. To that, I'm also very selective in who I work with.
Yeah.
So, it's very important for me. So I'm endorsing Bradley because I work with you and I trust you, but I don't feel the same about everyone. And I get hit up a lot because I work as I say I'm the general contractor of elder care. Yeah. So it's, I get hit up a lot. People want me to refer to them, but I'm very selective.
I didn't know your hidden expertise was ice cream parlors. So anyone needs a good ice cream parlor,
I got it going on. Yeah. I do want to say that what's important to me and important to LMR Elder Care is that we treat caregivers and their families the way that I would expect to be treated if I were the customer. And it is a business in the end. And so, I think it's important to deliver good customer service.
Yeah. On your website, I kept coming across this word that you use, and I want to know what you mean by it. You speak on your website of holistic advocacy. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
So it's the way that, I will say too many providers, specifically, I think we can speak about healthcare. Care and service is delivered in a silo. So, you think of a house, you have to find who's going to do the windows, who's going to do the roof, who's going to, put the tile in, so it's like you're building a house, but you need all different. So what do? We hire a general contractor to manage all that. Mm-hmm. And then they say, what color do you want the walls and what size do you want the tile? But like they're bringing me the information to allow me to make the most informed decisions. Mm-hmm. The same thing goes with elder care, with patient care, with working, by the way, I work with people 18 and up, living with disabilities and patients going through an acute issue. And so truthfully, it's not just, well, what do I do tomorrow? It's let's look at everything. Are there potentially benefits that we might be able to access? I mean, with my background, I'm very familiar and I understand the Medicaid route. And what Medicaid planning means, and when to plan and when not to plan. Avoiding caregiver burnout. So it's really important to say, oh, and how are you? Because there's not a family I've worked with, and I've worked with thousands at this point, that, I say, you're the person you're caring for is going to be okay, but what about you? Because if something happens to you, it all falls apart. And I'm sure you've heard of the situations, certainly in the funeral world, right? Who oftentimes is the person that
caregiver dies.
It's the caregiver who passes
overly
first.
Stressed and
correct.
Yeah.
So it's the emotional, it's the physical. They don't take care of themselves physically because they're busy taking care of the person perceived to have greater needs.
Yeah.
And I say that, perceived. I have an expertise in navigating long-term care insurance and getting people on claim because the companies are denying them. And here I work with people. This one I literally work around the United States on. I think that with, especially also like when we're talking about end of life, we spend a lot of time keeping people alive. And when you go to the hospital, it's very much like cure, 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 cure.
Yes.
And people don't take a beat, and no one ever says the words, well, what about if we want to stop care? What about if we want to bring in hospice? What about, what do we need to do to have as meaningful a death as we have a meaningful life? And so I think it's really important to recognize there's a finality. They're going to pass.
Let's dig into this idea.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm really happy that you brought it up because I don't think it's brought up enough. And I think it's like one of my missions is to get this idea that you've just brought up. I've been calling it lately going upstream. So this issue gets covered at the end, the very, very end of someone's life, and there's no time left.
Right.
So people like yourself may have an opportunity to educate, as you talk about, empower people, because we're going to talk about end-of-life issues. So I have this idea that talking about one's mortality enhances one's life, actually. It has a way of easing living by letting go of repressed thoughts and feelings about death and dying. And it brings family and friends closer together. Life is more intimate in my idea with this. And I've seen it. What are your thoughts on this idea, and do they influence your work as a geriatric care manager? Yeah,
100%. So it influences I will say, as a social services professional, and also as a daughter, as a parent, as a spouse. I think that for me, first of all, kind of going back to the education, I think that I think there's a taboo, right? So there's a taboo with discussing death and end-of-life planning. And for me, a lot of times that comes up when I'm just talking about getting legal documents in order, because people don't want to stop and have to think and make those kinds of decisions. And I can tell you with firsthand experience that as soon as it's done, it's almost like this weight is lifted off of. So as much as you don't want to do it, and I mean, myself, I'm a procrastinator, so I understand it. But once it's done, once you've done that kind of planning, just who's your power of attorney? Who's your healthcare proxy? Who's going to make the decisions? And by the way, it's not just who, but who's going to do the job. Yeah. Because I've had families where they've chosen agents and the agents can't do the job. Yeah. My own family. So I had to step in and take over when the first in line for making decision on my dad's end of life. I came in and I said, I'm taking over. Everyone deferred to me, and we kind of did the best that we can. I think that a lot of times it's the unknown and the kind of the scariness. And I think, to kind of pass it back on you, I think for me, managing expectations in every aspect of my life is how I guide things, right? So whether it's, looking up ways to figure out the directions of how am I going to get here this morning and how long is it going to take, I didn't wait till I got in the car to do it. I needed to know beforehand so that I could plan.
All right.
I think it's the same thing with funeral planning and end of life planning. And I think, again, until I was in it myself, I didn't know what the process was.
Right.
My dad passed away in Florida. I had to, on Christmas, figure out how to get to Florida, deal with the funeral home, I did everything. And I didn't even know what to expect. I think that, and my father, he was a planner. He did a good job. I mean, he prepared all this, lettered A to N of all kinds of instructions if he were to pass first. I mean, he went so far as to write a draft of his own obituary, right? But we also had conversations about it. He didn't just hand me an envelope and say, he said, well, this is what you need to do, and this is what I want, and this is what I did. And so it's like it really, I was intimately prepared to say it's time for the morphine because I knew what he wanted.
Yes.
I was intimately prepared to say, his favorite color was blue. Let's pick a blue casket.
Yeah.
I mean, just things like little things like that. I think that, kind of going back to the talk or the what you just brought up, the lack of planning and the lack of and the unknown is worse than any conversation you could have about the planning. I think that when we have these conversations, and especially if as a care manager I can open that door and help with that, it's permission for the loved ones to share openly and honestly. What are their fears? What are their wishes? What do they want to do? It really is part of the life cycle, the care continuum, as you will. So,
a big part of me doing this with people like you is to help collaborate. So shame on funeral service for not educating professionals who then can educate their clients, and everyone can be more comfortable with this idea. Mm-hmm. Thank you for being here. So we can collaborate.
Yeah, 100%.
So this is the first time I've said it this way. I thought about it last night. But do you bring up the D word, death, in end-of-life issues, or is that too emotionally taxing on the patient, your client, and the caregivers? And how would funeral planning enter into the conversation? How does it usually go if you do that stuff?
So I'll say that, again, because I really going back to that holistic word, it can't be in a silo. So to me, I'm good at reading the room, and I do always bring it up with every single family. Have you done funeral planning? So it's part of my initial conversation of onboarding, even if I'm doing a one-time consultation. So I don't, not all my clients are people that I continue with. I do one-time consultations, and I'm still bringing it up because it is part of the whole thing. I mean, to not discuss it is irresponsible. And, while I almost malpractice on the part of a care manager if we're not talking about everything, right? For my part, I try to read the room. So sometimes, the way I'll bring it up is from a financial point of view, honestly, because it plays really well into Medicaid. So, Medicaid
spending
down, so sometimes we can have that conversation in a way that, people always want to talk and plan about money. I mean, no one's like, okay, spend whatever it is, I don't care. Like, there's always someone. I don't care if you're Elon Musk, you're still looking at money, right?
Yeah.
So that is an easy segue for me in those type of situations.
Yeah.
Another person, they may need more hand-holding. And so we have to, find my way how I'm going to ease into it.
Yeah.
But I will say it always is part of my care plan.
Yeah. It's on your radar.
It's always on my radar. And I think it's also, listen, when I started my company, I was in my late 30s, maybe. Now I'm in my 60s, right? So I've lived a different life, like now it's, probably my entire, half the town, I've lived in my town for 32 years and people know I do elder care. So it's my life. I've lived it with my own family, so I think just having the conversations and finding the right way with who you're speaking to as a social worker, I'm sure you can appreciate that.
Yes, very much so. We'll talk more about that later. I have an idea I want to ask you about, but while end-of-life issues that we've been talking about are important, there's a lot of caregiving that needs to be done before someone dies. What helpful hints can you give the audience to avoid pitfalls when caring for a disabled elderly person?
I think the most important advice that I would give everyone, and just kind of, I know it sounds very cliche, and we
cliche away
is care for the caregivers.
Yes.
I mean, the caregivers become an afterthought. And, it's really important, if you've ever been a caregiver yourself, to understand what is. I had a call from someone yesterday who, 62 years old, early onset dementia, and there's a money issue, the spouse is, and it was just like this horrible situation. And I go, and I'm like, well, you can't afford to pay me. You need to save your money and talk to an elder care attorney, and these are the issues that I'm going to identify with you, and also give the attorney a heads up without using your name. But when you call them, they will now have my legal, and I'm like, I can't do it. I'm just going to get you started because I have to, so I'm like, look, you need to speak to an elder law attorney. What a good sister you are making these calls. She was crying by the end of the call and sending me text messages about how appreciative and thankful. But I know it's what she needed, and I knew she couldn't, they couldn't afford me. So they couldn't afford to pay anything. So it's not just me. It's I think hiring a care manager, whoever it is. Of course, I'd like you to consider LMR Elder Care, but it saves time for families. It saves money. It may not feel that way, but again, I'm going to use the house example. The house next door to me was purchased by flippers, so. They built the first floor, then they had to take it down because they did it wrong. Then they put a deck on, and then it was wiggly, so then they had to take it down. Then they put a first floor and a second floor and a deck. And now it's like, so everything is the amount of money that they wasted, and the amount of time they wasted by not doing it right. With me, you're going to do it right. And so I'm going to reduce stress, identify competing obligations. I spoke about competing interests.
Yeah.
Okay, so I spoke to you about, family members who are in discord. So it's very much, let me take that stress off of you. Let me figure it out. Let me be the bad cop. Let me give everyone a job. Maybe you're going to live in South Carolina and you're going to deal with the home care agency in West Orange. Like, there are things that people can do in the world that we're living in, that it all doesn't have to fall on one person.
Yeah.
And that helps the family relationships. It helps the person who's being cared for, right?
Yeah.
It helps the caregivers, and it just gets more work done.
I'm going back to this idea of holistic.
Mm-hmm.
Holistic, HOL.
Right.
But for you, I want to change it to holistic, WHOL.
Yeah.
Because the way you're talking is, you look at everything as a system and look at it as a whole.
Correct.
So the caregivers, the caregiving, the doctors, everyone, you have a very holistic.
Correct.
Everyone involved needs to be
because
considered.
It all comes together.
Yeah.
It's sort of, like when we started and you asked me about myself, and I said it's not a straight line, but it's still all together got me here,
Yeah.
right? So every experience I've had, not to be philosophical, but really, I believe every experience kind of leads you somewhere. So
Yeah.
whether it's a good experience, whether it's a bad experience, right?
Yeah.
So you have a good experience at a restaurant, you go back. You have a bad experience at a restaurant, you might tell a few friends, right?
Or ice cream parlor.
No, never a bad experience at an ice cream parlor. So that's off limits.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.